Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
Oh, such wonderful music. It reminds me of a familiar tune. I am the monarch of the sea, the ruler of the Queen's Navy, whose praise Great Britain loudly chants. And we are his sisters and his cousins and his aunts. His sisters and his cousins and his aunts. Oh, yes, when an anchor here I ride, my bosom swells with pride, and I snap my finger at a foeman's taunts. And so do his sisters and his cousins and his aunts. And so do his sisters and his cousins and his aunts, his sisters and his cousins and his aunts. But when the breezes blow, I generally go below and seek the seclusion that the cabin grants. And so do his sisters and his cousins and his aunts, and so do his sisters and his cousins and his aunts, and so do his sisters and his cousins and his aunts.
Good afternoon, all. Welcome to today's performance of The Importance of Being Earnest by Mr. Oscar Wilde, first performed in 1895. My name is Lane. No first name, just Lane. Just first names you will soon discover are of vital importance in tonight's play, but my character is not considered significant enough to have one. Such is the near anonymous life of the butler. You see, I am the butler to Mr. Algernon Moncrief, the gentleman you can't help but hear crooning in off stage to the left.
Sisters and his cousins and his aunts.
The song he is rendering is from the comic operetta HMS Pinafore by Mr. William Schwernick Gilbert and Sir Arthur Sullivan. You probably have heard of them just by their last names, Gilbert and Sullivan. I inform you of these facts as a point of interest, not because it has anything to do whatsoever with the plot of the play you are about to see.
I am the monarch of the sea, the ruler of the Queen's Navy.
Mr. Moncrief is not, as his song seems to proclaim, the monarch of the sea. Hardly that. He's an impish young bachelor, and this is his apartment on Half Moon Street in London. The year is 1895. We shall soon be introduced to him, as well as three other characters. Moncrief's lovely cousin, Gwendolen, his austere aunt, the Lady Augusta Bracknell, and his very good friend, Mr. Worthing. That fellow is just outside this door, waiting for me to announce his visit. Mr. Moncrief will finish his tunes presently and will step through that door. So you may at last observe him for yourself. There's more you will learn as you watch this scene progress, but I really think that's all you need to go on for now.
His sisters and his cousins, whom he reckons up by the dozens, and his aunts. Oh, did you hear me singing, Lane?
I didn't think it was polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I wish you had. I feel I am in an unusually good voice today.
If you say so, sir. Mr. Ernest Worthing is without, sir.
Without what? Oh, let's see. Mr. Ernest Worthing. What about? Without what? Well, by all means, show him within.
Certainly, sir.
Let's go.
Sir.
Yes.
How are you, my dear Algie? My dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere?
And where were you all last week, may I ask?
Oh, I was at my home in the country.
And what on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses others. It's exceedingly boring.
Got nice neighbors in your part of Hertfordshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to any of them.
Then you must amuse them greatly.
Hey, Hertfordshire.
By the way, Hertfordshire is your part of the county, is it not?
How did you know that? Hello. Cucumber sandwiches. Is someone coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Cousin Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
I am afraid Aunt Augusta won't approve of your being here.
And why is that?
Oh, my dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as obvious as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
But I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come to town expressly to propose to her.
You propose to my cousin Gwendolyn? Well, I absolutely forbid it.
What? You forbid it?
Yes, I forbid her marriage to a person that I do not know.
What do you mean? You know me very well, Algy.
I thought I did.
Hey, that's my notebook.
Mr. Ernest Worthing. So you admit it's yours, do you?
Well, of course it's mine. You've seen me with it any number of times. I've been missing it for a month. I was very nearly offering a reward for its return.
Oh, I do wish you would do that. I could use the money. But this doesn't belong to you at all. It says, from little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. This seems to be a present from someone called Cecily to someone called Jack. Who are these people, and how did you come by dear Uncle Jack's property?
I am Uncle Jack.
How can you be? Your name is Earnest.
No, my name is Jack. Well, John, really. Jack is a nickname.
Oh, really? Jack or John just can't be your name. You've always been to Earnest. I have introduced you to everyone we know as Earnest. And how could you be Jack if you were Earnest with me? You are the most earnest-looking person I have ever seen in my life. It's perfectly absurd you saying that your name isn't Earnest. It's on your cards. Lane just gave me one. It says right here, Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany, London. I'll keep this card as proof that your name is Ernest if ever you attempt to deny it to me or to Gwendolyn or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the notebook was given to me in the country.
Oh, by someone called Little Cecily, it said, who refers to you as her dear uncle. Come now, old boy. Let's have the whole truth and do make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. Do you remember that I told you I was adopted?
Vaguely, yes. Your story is believable so far. Go on.
Well, the man who adopted me was old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a wealthy gentleman who lived in the country.
Okay.
I won't tell you where, for you shall never be invited there. Mr. Cardew, when he died, left me his estate and guardian of his only granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle, from motives of respect that you cannot possibly appreciate,
Of course not.
lives there under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Plausible. This Cecily person sounds most interesting. But do go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, when one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone. It becomes tedious to be so proper. So from time to time, I have a desire to come up to London just to get away from it all. Consequently, I've always pretended to have a younger brother named Earnest, who lives in town, and he's quite naughty. He gets into the most dreadful scrapes. And I, as his older brother, must come up to town periodically to straighten him out. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple. You find my confession funny?
Oh, not funny so much as familiar. Have I ever told you my good friend Bunbury?
Who?
Bunbury. B-U-N-B-U.
Yes. No, you haven't.
Well,
Who is he?
well, he's my very sick, but very fictitious, very good friend who lives somewhere out in the country. Where exactly he lives, I change to suit my whims every so often, and that is what seems so familiar to me. You have invented a useful younger brother named Earnest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you please. I have invented a permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to get out of things that I don't want to do. For this purpose, Bunbury is simply invaluable. For instance, if it weren't for Bunbury, I wouldn't be able to, Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health this evening, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at your club tonight. And I would be stuck having dinner with Aunt Augusta.
But I haven't invited you to dine with me at my club tonight.
I know. You've been very careless about sending me an invitation, and yet I was sure you were bound to ask me.
Well, I do believe you're destined to dine with your Aunt Augusta tonight. I don't think a dinner invitation from me is in the offing.
Not even if I promise to get her out of the way for a few minutes so that you can have an opportunity to be alone with Gwendolyn? You have about 10 seconds to invite me before Lane ushers her in.
Algy, I was just thinking how nice it would be for you to dine with me at my club tonight. Are you free?
Oh, rather late for tonight, don't you? Isn't it, old man? I am supposed to have my dinner with the dear Aunt Augusta. However shall I get out of that one?
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
But please.
Odd luck. Shall we say 7?
Wonderful.
Good evening, Algernon dear. I hope you are behaving well.
Oh, I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
The two are not the same and are rarely go together. Mr. Worthing.
How do you do, Lady Bracknell?
I do very well, thank you very much.
Dear me, you look smart.
I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, please don't call me that. It would leave no room for development.
I am horribly sorry that we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I haven't seen her since her poor husband passed away. I never saw someone so altered. She was clearly 20 years younger. Sit over here beside me, Gwendolyn.
Oh, thank you, Mama. I'm fine right where I am.
Algernon, I have quite a treat for you tonight at dinner. Lady Farquhar and her husband will be attending. Such a delightful couple.
Oh, yes. I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would unbalance the place settings. Why, your uncle would have to dine upstairs. No, we cannot have an odd number.
It is a terrible disappointment to me, but I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Oh, yes. Mr. Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, Miss Algernon, I should be obliged if you would request your Mr. Bunbury to be kind enough not to be ill on the 15th, as I rely upon you to arrange the music for my recital.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, and I think I can promise that he will be all right by then. I shall be happy to arrange the music. In fact, if you will join me in the next room, we can run over the program together.
Thank you, Algernon. How thoughtful of you. I was thinking some frog maybe, or some beetle.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, pray don't speak to me about the weather. Whenever anyone speaks to me about the weather, I always think they wish to discuss something else.
Well, I do wish to discuss something else.
Well, I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
I would like to take advantage of Lady Bunbury's temporary absence.
Well, I certainly would hope you would do so. Mama has an awkward way of coming back into the room quite suddenly.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever known.
Well, yes, I'm quite aware of that fact, and I shall admit that you have always had an irresistible attraction for me. Even before I met you, I was fascinated by you. Yes, you see, when I was young, I always dreamed of being in love with someone named Earnest. There's just something about that name that inspires absolute confidence. And when Algernon told me he had a friend named Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Oh, passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name weren't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest. It fits you perfectly. You've always been earnest with me.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say I think there are lots of nicer names than Ernest. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack. Oh, no, I've known several Jacks, and they're more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a nickname for John. And I pity any woman who has to be married to someone named John. No, the only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You said you love me, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not indifferent to me.
Well, I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. There's never been any talk about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think that would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I should let you know in advance, quite frankly, that I intend to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. Have you something to say to me?
But you know what I have to say to you.
But you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. My, how long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Well, it's my only time doing it.
Is it? I've heard that men often propose for practice. Oh, what blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope you always look at me just like this, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, please rise from this semi-recumbent posture. It is quite indecorous.
Mama, I must ask you to leave. This is no place for you. Mr. Worthing's not quite finished.
Finished with what?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you are engaged to no one. And when you do become engaged to someone, I will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, and is hardly a matter that can be left for her to decide for herself. And now I have a few questions for you, Mr. Worthing, and while I inquire, you may wait below in the carriage, Gwendolyn.
Mama.
The carriage, Gwendolyn. You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Well, I prefer to stand. Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men. However, I am quite ready to add you to this list if you provide answers that are adequate for a truly affectionate mother requires. First, how old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married. What is your income?
Between £7,000 and £8,000 a year.
The wages of a gentleman. That is satisfactory. I presume this is not an income that issues from anything as plebeian as a trade.
My income is derived from my investments, chiefly. I also own a country house with some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres or so. That's a source of some revenue.
A country house? You have a townhouse as well, I hope? A young girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could never be expected to live in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, and I'm up here quite often.
What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. However, that could easily be altered.
You mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. And what of your parents? Are they living?
I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, might be regarded as a misfortune. And to lose two seems to be carelessness. Who was your father?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I'm a foundling.
A foundling?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a kindly old gentleman, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket for the town of Worthing in his pocket at the time. He's the closest thing to a father I have known.
And where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to Worthing actually find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was found in a somewhat plain handbag with handles on it. An ordinary handbag, in fact, which he got at the cloakroom of Victoria Station. It was given to him by mistake for his own.
The cloakroom? At Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born or bred, at any case in a handbag, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of respectable upbringing.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything to ensure the happiness of Gwendolen.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and require some relations as soon as possible. You must establish a better lineage than a handbag if you are ever to be accepted by polite society.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any time. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I would allow my only daughter to be married into a cloakroom, have a purse as an in-law. What kind of family is that? However would one phrase the invitations? Mr. and Mrs. Handbag cordially invite... No. I am sorry, Mr. Worthing. This cannot be. And I must wish you a... Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy?
Oh.
You don't mean to say Gwendolen refused you?
No. Gwendolen accepted my proposal all right. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. But her mother is perfectly unbearable. Say, you don't think that there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in, say, 150 years, do you?
Oh, all women become like their mothers, and that is their tragedy. No man does, and that is his.
How clever.
It is perfectly phrased. By the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, that sort of truth isn't quite the thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl.
And what about your brother? Did you tell her of her very naughty kin?
No, by next week I'll put an end to him. I'll say he died in Paris or Moscow or somewhere of a severe chill. That'll get rid of him.
That's a rather callous way to deal with a brother, even an imaginary one. And what about your ward, Cecily? Won't she be affected by the sudden loss of her dear uncle?
No, she'll be all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say.
I should think I'd rather like to meet this Cecily.
Well, I will take very good care that you never do. No, she's excessively pretty, and she's only 18.
Have you told Gwendolen yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18?
Oh, One doesn't just blurt these things out to people. Besides, Cecily and Gwendolyn are certain to become extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you want that a half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they have called each other a good deal many other things. Now, my dear boy, don't you think it's time we dress for dinner? And don't go forgetting your wallet like I always do. Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Turn around, Algie. I have something very specific to say to Mr. Worthing.
My own darling.
Oh, Ernest, from the expression on Mama's face after your interview, I'm afraid we'll never be married. However, although she may prevent us from being man and wife, there is nothing she can do to alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, dear Gwendolyn.
Oh, dear Ernest. Oh, but your first name has an irresistible fascination for me. I have your London address, but what is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There's good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something quite desperate. That, of course, will take some consideration. But I will write to you every day.
My own one.
How long will you remain in town?
Only until Monday. Then I must go out to the country house.
Okay, good. Algie, you may turn around now.
You'll let me see you to the carriage, my darling?
Certainly.
I do believe old Bunbury will be ill all weekend.
Cecily, here is your mathematics book. Pray open to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like mathematics. It is so irrational. I know perfectly well that I frown too much when concentrating on my mathematics.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your mathematics as he was leaving for town the other day.
And now we move to this next scene in our play. This is the sumptuous country estate of Mr. John/Jack/Ernest Worthing. Mr. Worthing is the guardian that Miss Prism over there alluded to. The attractive young lady that ignoring her mathematics lesson is Miss Cicely Cardew, who is Mr. Worthing's ward. Presently in this scene, we shall introduce you to the local victor, Dr. Chasuble. I am the butler to Mr. Worthing, and my name is Merriman. Merriman, the butler. What's that? Lane, you say? Yes, I am found out. I am Lane in London and Merriman out in the country. Well, other people can have their spot of whimsy, can they not? Please, don't let on. All or none of the other actors seem to notice that all of the butlers, in all of the theatricals, in all of the world, are exactly the same. As they say in mathematics, things that are equal to the same thing are also equal to each other. Now that we have that understood, we can continue. It's a sunny afternoon upon the Sunday following the earlier scene, and the action is moved to Mr. Worthing's estate here in Hertfordshire, far from the drama of London. You should also know that some of the characters we have already met shall be arriving here soon by coach or train. There should be some more surprises associated with that, so I will divulge no more upon that score. Now, as this second scene recommences, my humble part as butler requires me to retreat off stage and await my actual appearance.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he looks so serious, I think he doesn't feel well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health. However, as you know, Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. You must remember the constant anxiety about his unfortunate brother Ernest and the scrapes that man gets into.
I do wish Uncle Jack would allow his unfortunate brother Ernest to come out here to the country sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism, and thus change his ill-disciplined and reckless ways.
We can but live in hope. Put away your diary, Cecily. It really is time for your lessons. Why ever do you keep a diary anyway?
I keep a diary in order to record all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I would probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened. I believe that faulty memory is responsible for nearly all the sensational novels in the library.
Did you know I once wrote a rather sensational novel myself?
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end and they lived happily ever after. I've heard that ending too many times.
The good people in it ended happily, and the bad people ended unhappily. That is what fiction means.
Was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was sadly lost years ago. Do your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we all this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, very well.
Miss Prism has been complaining of a slight headache.
Oh.
I think it would do her much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache and it would be in need of a break from the lessons.
Has Mr. Worthing returned from town yet?
We do not expect you until tomorrow afternoon.
I see. He sent me a telegram saying he very much wished to speak to me. A telegram, no less. Perhaps he has some urgent difficulty with his unfortunate brother Earnest. How troubling that situation must be for him. I will have to return tomorrow. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I do find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
Oh, with pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure. We might go as far as the Arbor and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too scandalous for a young girl.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid mathematics.
Do you see this calling card I have on my salver? You should know this is the very same calling card that I delivered to Mr. Moncrief in the very first scene. The very same one. Now, you might wonder how a calling card traveled all the way from London out here to the country. I told you there were surprises afoot. Mr. Ernest Worthing has just come over from the train station.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany, London. Why, it's Uncle Jack's unfortunate brother. Here! Did you tell him that Uncle Jack was still in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed greatly disappointed. However, he asked if he might stay overnight to await him. After that, he asked me if anyone else from the household were at home. I replied that you were out here in the garden. He said he very much wished to speak to you privately for a moment.
Did he? Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here. And I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about preparing a guest room for him.
Very good, miss.
I have never really met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid that he will look just like everyone else. And he does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You have made some strange mistake. Firstly, I am not little. In fact, I am more than usually tall for my age. Secondly, I am not technically your cousin. Uncle Jack is my guardian and not truly my uncle.
Oh, true.
Your card indicates that you are Uncle Jack's brother, Ernest. His wicked brother, Earnest.
Oh, I am not really wicked at all, Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
Not wicked? Then you have certainly been deceiving all of us in a very inexcusable manner. Everyone says you're wicked. I hope you have not been pretending to be wicked and really being good all the time. That would be hypocritical and wicked.
Oh, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear of it.
In fact, I have been very bad in my own small way.
But I don't think it should be so. You should be so prideful of that, though I am sure it was very pleasant.
Oh, it is much more pleasant being here with you.
But why are you here at all? If you were here to see your brother, Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I was hoping to talk with him.
I know what it's about.
You do?
I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. Uncle Jack is sending you off to America.
America? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, or America. I assumed that America was the least objectionable choice.
I don't know. The stories I've heard about America, not particularly interesting. I have no desire to go there. The world I live in is perfectly well enough for me, Cecily.
But are you good enough for it?
No. I am far too wicked in my ways for this world. I know that. But perhaps you could make it your mission to reform me, turn me into a good person?
That indeed would be a worthy endeavor.
But how would we begin?
I should begin by asking the cook to provide a luncheon for you. The first step in changing one's life entirely is to have a wholesome meal. Won't you come inside?
Thank you, but perhaps I should have one of your pink roses for my buttonhole first.
Why a pink rose?
Oh, because you are very much like a pink rose, Cecily, and it will remind me of you.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are quite the prettiest girl I have ever seen.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that any sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think I'd like to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. The Church of England does not preclude you marrying, you know.
Oh, the thought of wedding bliss, even at my age, has not escaped my mind, my dear Miss Prism. If only I should become acquainted with the right woman.
She might be closer to you than you think.
Oh.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing!
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
No, I've returned sooner than I expected.
But, Mr. Worthing, sir, you are dressed in a garb of woe. I hope this does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagances?
Still leading that extravagant life of pleasure?
If only he were. No. Tragically, he is dead.
Your brother? Ernest? Dead?
Quite dead.
Well, that teaches him for his wastrel life.
Mr. Worthing, I offer my sincere condolences to you. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Well, poor Ernest had many faults, but still, it's a sad, sad blow.
Yes, very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact.
Dying in Paris? I fear that hardly points to any serious state of mind at the last.
Dr. Chasuble, on another subject, do you remember that I sent you a pressing telegram the other day?
Oh, telegram? Oh, I could hardly forget. To think that someone would have a message for me so urgent that he needs the use and speed of telegraphy. Was it perhaps over this tragic business with your unfortunate brother?
Brother? I don't have a... no. No. This is in regard to a christening.
Oh, a christening. Yes. Is there any particular infant in whom you're interested in christening, Mr. Worthing?
It's not for a child, dear doctor. No, the fact is, I would like to be christened myself. This afternoon, if you're available.
But surely you've been christened already.
Well, I don't remember anything about it. In any case, I must change my first name as soon as possible, and the quickest way I could think of was to be christened anew. Whether I was christened once before should make no difference, I would think. Would you be able to do that for me?
Oh, any time you like, sir. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around to your church about 5, if that would suit you.
Oh, no. I have a set of twins to christen at 5.
5:30 then.
Oh, perfect.
Uncle Jack, what a surprise to see you back so soon. But what depressing clothes you have on. Do go change them.
Cecily!
My child, my dear child, don't you realize he's wearing mourning clothing?
Morning? It's long afternoon. What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Don't you look so downcast. I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Ernest! He arrived just a few minutes ago.
What nonsense. I don't have a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he's still your brother. You can't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will greet him properly, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Oh, these are joyful, albeit confusing tidings, I'm sure.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to muddle matters.
Ours is not to question the miraculous, Miss Prism.
This is absolutely absurd. Good heavens!
Dearest brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am so very sorry for all the trouble I have given you all of these years, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's greeting.
Nothing will induce me to take it. I feel this coming down here is disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor sick friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit every so often.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Well, there surely must be good in one who is kind to an invalid.
Oh, brother John, I must say I find your coldness toward me to be exceedingly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have ever come up here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't greet Ernest properly, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I am going to do it.
I think we might leave these two brothers. alone, together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You scoundrel, Algy. You must get out of this place as soon as possible. You will not find Mr. Bunbury here.
Oh, come on. Come now. You know, Brother Jack, you did not sufficiently impart to me how delightful Cecily is. She is an absolute darling.
You are not to talk about Miss Cardew that way. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like the way what you are wearing. It is silly you wearing morning clothes, presumably for me, a person who's standing right in front of you. A man whom you were just about to invite to stay as a guest for the week. It's positively unseemly.
I am certainly not going to invite you to stay here for a week. I'm going to say you must return to London as soon as possible on the very next train. And I'm going to have my driver drive the carriage around. I hope you have a very pleasant journey back to town.
I'm not going anywhere until I see Cecily again. And here she is.
Oh, I've merely come back to water the roses. Where did Uncle Jack go?
Oh, he's gone to order a carriage for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Away? But you've just got here. I was sure you were to stay a week. The housekeeper's made up a guest room for you.
Oh, that was terribly kind.
I thought so, too.
While we're alone, Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you by stating frankly how you seem to be every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Such frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary?
Certainly. Where else would I keep all my personal and private thoughts, as well as the impressions of what others may have of me?
Sure.
But now, Ernest, please go on. I believe you were saying something about absolute perfection. You may continue from there. I am quite ready for more.
Well, well.
Ernest, please don't cough. I don't know how to spell a cough.
Okay, Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, you
Wonderful and incomparable beauty. Yes, yes.
I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should use the word hopelessly, Ernest. Hopelessly would imply that I have returned no feelings for you. I believe I shall write ardently. That makes much more sense.
Cecily, oh, Cecily. I don't care for anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. And will you marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course. We've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes. It will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
How did this happen if we have never met?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first told us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, Miss Prism and I have talked about you very much. And of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. I fell in love with you very early on, Ernest.
And then we got engaged?
Yes, on February 14th, Valentine's Day. You asked me so sweetly.
I did?
Yes, on one knee. Oh, I struggled with myself, but you were so earnest, that I finally accepted you right here in this garden. The very next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and I promised I'd always wear it.
Did I give you this? It is very pretty, isn't it?
Yes. You've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It was the most beautiful engagement ring in the shop. You see this mark here? That indicates that I actually cried when I accepted it.
Oh, there's another one of those marks right over there.
That was my response to one of your letters.
My letters? But, my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I was always forced to write your letters for you. It was your entreaty after I broke off our engagement that made me cry.
You broke off our engagement?
Of course, on the 22nd of last March. Here's the entry. Today, I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues to be so charming.
Well, why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? Wait a minute, I hadn't done anything. Cecily, I'm very much hurt that you broke off our engagement, especially when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, what a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
No, of course. What do you mean about my name?
Well, you must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to marry someone whose name was Earnest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor woman whose husband's name is not Earnest.
But my dear child, do you mean to say you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name would it be?
Oh, any name. Algernon, if you like.
But I don't like the name Algernon.
Oh, well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling. You mean you couldn't love me if my name were Algernon?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not actually be able to love you.
Cecily, well then, I must urgently speak to your vicar, Dr. Chasuble.
Concerning our wedding, of course.
Oh, yes, that, but also a most pressing christening.
Isn't that a bit premature?
The driver is here with the carriage, sir, and...
Perfect. He can whisk me away over to the vicarage. It shan't be more than half an hour, my dear.
What an impetuous boy he is. I must amend my diary as to the date of his proposal. And his hair color.
And a Miss Fairfax has called to see Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Well, is it Mr. Worthing in the house?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the vicarage some time ago.
Please ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. Presumably she's one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his work in London. Oh, please let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a lovely name. Something tells me that we're going to be very good friends. I already like you more than I can possibly say. I'm always right with my first impressions.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Please sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you must always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
I'm afraid I've been brought up to be rather short-sighted. Do you mind if I look at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
You're here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no. I live here.
Really? Your mother or some elderly female relative lives here with you?
Well, I'm an orphan.
Indeed.
My guardian and my governess look after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Ernest never told me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. However, I could wish that you were considerably older and not quite so pretty as you are. Yes, I would feel much more restful of mind if you were 45 or 50 and more than usually plain.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his elder brother who watches over me.
Ernest never told me he had a brother.
I am sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Well, that accounts for it, Cecily. Oh, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing quite anxious. It would have been terrible if a cloud had come between such a strong friendship as ours. Now, you're quite sure it's not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is your guardian?
Hardly. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, how can I keep such wonderful news from you? Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there's been some slight mistake. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me.
I am afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago. See?
Well, it is certainly very curious, because he asked me to marry him yesterday afternoon at 5:30. Here is my diary entry so that you may verify the incident. I'm so sorry, my dear Cecily, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
I'm sorry, dear Gwendolyn, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he's clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I shall never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? How presumptuous of you.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I trapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you?
Shall I lay the tea, ma'am?
Yes, Miriam, just as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills over there, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I don't like crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in town.
Personally, I don't understand how anyone can live in the country. Anybody who's anybody lives in London. The country bores me to death.
May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar's just not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Oh, bread and butter. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax, Merriman.
Oh, you have filled my tea with sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the sweetness of my nature, but you, Miss Cardew, may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
Oh, from the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. Oh, I'm never deceived in such matters. My first impressions are always right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
Oh, one moment. May I ask you if you're engaged to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Oh, yes, you may. Thank you.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman who is blowing you a kiss is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
That is Uncle Jack.
Jack?
And this is Ernest. Oh, wait. A moment, Ernest. Before, may I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn?
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could put such an idea in your pretty little head?
You may give me a kiss.
Okay. I felt that there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now kissing you on your cheek is my cousin, Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh.
Is your name really Jack?
I cannot deny it.
We have been the victims of a gross deception.
My sweet, wronged Cecily.
My poor wounded Gwendolyn.
Oh, I feel closer to you than any woman that I know. You will call me sister, won't you?
Of course I shall, sister. But there are a few questions I would like to have cleared up by these two gentlemen.
Oh, yes. I too have some specific questions to ask. May I go first?
Certainly, sister.
Oh, thank you, sister. Mr. Worthing, where's your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance for us to know where Ernest is.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it's very painful for me to be forced to tell you the truth. However, let me begin by stating plainly that I have no brother Ernest.
No brother at all?
None. Never had a brother in my life.
I'm afraid it's quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a prospective bride to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Oh, no. And hardly, and I don't like the way those two strangers are staring at us.
They are decidedly cheeky, are they not? But now I shall ask my question of this Algernon. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
Oh, I did so purposefully that I might have an opportunity of meeting you, dear Cecily.
Well, that certainly seems like a satisfactory explanation, doesn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, if you can believe him.
Well, I don't entirely. But his answer is disarmingly delightful, notwithstanding.
Well, I hope for an agreeable answer to my next question, if I may.
It is your turn.
Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
Well, I have considerable doubts on the subject, but I intend to crush them. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
Mm-hmm.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief has said.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
Right. I had forgotten. There are some principles at stake that we cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not an easy one.
Could we both not speak at the same time?
Oh, an excellent idea. I always speak at the same time as other people. Your first names are still an impossible barrier. We will only marry Ernest.
Is that all?
But
But we
we've
have arranged to be christened this afternoon. We are changing our first names to Ernest.
For our sakes,
You're prepared to go to that length?
We are.
Oh, what bravery.
These gentlemen obviously have sturdy character.
Oh, darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolyn, what is the meaning of this?
Really, that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here, Gwendolyn. Stand by me. Mr. Worthing, you must understand that all communication between you and my daughter Gwendolyn must cease immediately. On this point, as on all points, I am firm.
But I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind. And now, as regards my nephew Algernon. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Is this the house in which your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
No. Bunbury. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Yes, poor Bunbury died this afternoon. About 10 minutes ago.
I am not unhappy to hear it. And now I must ask, Mr. Worthing, who is this young person into whose eyes my nephew Algernon is gazing into in what appears to me a most inappropriate manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Blacknell.
Another engagement? I think a few preliminary inquiries are in order. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew in any way related to a train station? I'm just looking for information. After all, it was not until yesterday that I had been informed someone's family origins could be a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew. Perhaps you've heard of him.
The name is unfamiliar, but then I know few people outside of London. There, I know everybody. Speaking of which, Gwendolyn, we must be on our way. My business here is quite concluded. And, Mr. Worthing, just as a matter of course, is your Miss Cardew in possession of any small fortune?
Oh, only about £130,000 in the funds. That's all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
£130,000? And in the funds, you say?
130,000 British pounds would have converted to a bit over $700,000 when this play was written. Adjusted for inflation, we learn that young Miss Cecily was worth about $20 million in today's funds. Just so you modern Yanks understand. Oh, and the funds were something like government-issued bonds. Very secure. Carry on.
£130,000, you say? And in the funds, Miss Cardew seems to be a most attractive young lady, now that I look at her appraisingly. Few girls of the present day have truly solid qualities that last and improve with time. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is somewhat simple and your hair is natural, but we can soon alter that, Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl around. And I don't care about social possibilities.
Algernon, do not speak badly of society. Only those who can't get in do that.
Thank you.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
I beg your pardon for interrupting, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds?
Well, it pains me very much to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew, but the fact is I do not approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon?
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, he obtained admission to my office under the false pretense of being my brother. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is he is perfectly well aware of the fact that I have no brother.
I am, Mr. Worthing, after serious consideration, willing to decide entirely to overlook my nephew's behavior to you.
Oh, that's very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always say I'm 20 when I go to evening parties.
Quite right. No woman should be accurate about giving her age. 18, well, you will soon be of age and are free to make your own decisions. So I think your guardian's opinion is of little worth.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again, but it's only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. Why, London society is full of women of very high birth who have been 35 for years now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even more attractive at that age. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me until I was 35?
Of course I could, dear Cecily.
Yes, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting for anybody.
My dear Mr. Worthing, Miss Gardew states positively that she cannot wait until she was 35. I would beg you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment that you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I would most gladly allow Algernon to marry Cecily.
You must be quite aware, sir, that what you propose is out of the question. That is not the destiny I have for my daughter, Algernon. Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, is free to choose from himself. Come along, Gwendolen. We must not miss the train.
All righty then. Everything is quite ready for the christening.
Christening? What christening?
Why, these two gentlemen have expressed a desire for an immediate baptism.
At their age, Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses.
Am I to understand there is to be no christening at all this afternoon?
I don't think it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
Prism? It is Miss Prism. Do not try to hide. I recognize you. Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's house pushing a carriage with a baby boy inside. You never returned. The carriage was recovered, but it only contained some lengthy, unreadable manuscript. The baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame, I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. One morning, I prepared as usual to take the baby out for a walk in its carriage. I also had a large green paisley handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I was writing. In a moment of unforgivable mental abstraction, I put the manuscript in the carriage and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you leave the handbag?
I left it in the cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The Brighton line?
The Brighton line.
One moment. I need to get something.
Were you going to get this, Mr. Worthing?
Yes, Merriman.
It is my duty to meet the needs of my gentlemen.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here on the pocket are my initials. MVP Miss Violet Prism. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been inconvenient to be without it for all these years.
Miss Prism, you have restored more in this handbag, for I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother.
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried. I am not your mother. Lady Bracknell can tell you who you are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly tell me who I am?
Well, if you are the baby in the bag, you are the son of my sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and Algernon's elder brother.
Algie's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, my unfortunate brother. Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you scoundrel. You'll have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved to me like a brother before in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I'll admit. But it's difficult when you get a new older brother out of nowhere.
Oh, my own. But what own are you? What is your first name now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens. I'd quite forgotten that point. The question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened?
Certainly.
Then what name was I given? Please, tell me the worst.
Well, being the eldest son, you were naturally named after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's name?
I cannot, on the moment, remember what the general's first name was, but I'm sure he had one.
The Army Directory for the last 40 years, sir.
Just what I needed.
Why, thank you, Merriman. However do you think of all these things? You're quite welcome, sir. I only wish to serve.
Now, he was a general, did you say? Then the name would appear in the Army lists of the periods, I suppose.
I should think so.
Generals. Ah, General Moncrief. Earnest John. Earnest John. And I would have been named after him?
Yes, certainly. I remember now that the general's first name was Earnest, but for some reason I disliked the name.
I always told you, Gwendolyn, that my name was Earnest. And my name is Earnest. I mean, it's naturally Earnest.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
My own one.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
Violet, at last.
Frederick, at last.
No, thank you.
Ernest, at last.
Yes, at last I've realized the vital importance of being earnest.
Another one.
Where is
Adam.
Director.
And Adam.
Adam, come forward.